Hope that each and every one of you all are doing well. I wanted to go ahead and do a second instruction briefly of what the AHA paper presentation and genogram looks like so that each and every one of you all have some familiarity once again. The reason for this video is to help you all so that you don't make this assignment any more difficult. I would say that it looks like maybe a quarter of you all have already completed the assignment, and from just browsing them, they look very good. And so no worries there. And so kudos and thank you to those who have already completed it. Do not worry if you have not completed it yet. You have more than enough time. Please check the due date online. So this is the second time that I'm going to explain this just to make it a little bit easier for some of us who may have some questions, okay? And by all means, let me know if you have any additional by call or text, okay? So the AHA paper genogram and presentation sounds like this. Each of you all will write a 3 to 5 page paper of an AHA moment that you had from the readings, course discussions, and or activities or videos. We've seen a lot of what would you do videos, etc. An AHA paper includes your personal thoughts and application to the required and supplemental readings and activities. This is not necessarily a summary of the reading or lecture, but your personal application. So think of an AHA moment, which is kind of an epiphany, something where the light bulb goes off, okay? And it makes you think about something you never really thought about before, or a point in which you realize something about yourself or others. Please remember that you will share this with your peers. So here's some helpful guidelines. Again, we're looking at 3 to 5 pages, okay? Double space. Times New Roman font. Remember, proper APA or MLA format. I'm flexible here, but please make sure that your paper is double spaced. Okay, that's very important. Also, 3 to 5 pages double spaced. Okay, so we're looking at 2 to 2.5 pages of single space. But again, make sure yours is double spaced. Let's take a look at some helpful guidelines that I provided for you. So typically in a perfect world, you'll have 5 paragraphs. You all know that you'll probably have significantly more. For those of us who like structure, I think this is laid out pretty well so that you can have a good understanding of how you should lay out your paper. Most individuals will have between 8 and 12 paragraphs. Please don't be beholden to that. Just because you have that doesn't mean you have a perfect paper, and because you have less than that doesn't mean you have a horrible paper, okay? Use your judgment, but here's what I'm looking for. Number one, all of you all should have an introduction paragraph, okay? In which you mention all 3 of your concepts or theories, typically 3 to 6 sentences, okay? So for the purposes of my paper, I've chosen to look at culture shock as my first theory or concept. My second theory is going to be social exchange theory. And the third theory that I'm going to use is the hidden self, going way back to Johari Window. You do not have to use those 3 theories. Please expand your horizon. You can use whatever 3 theories or concepts that you would like. We have literally done over 200 plus theories and concepts. Please go through the PowerPoints, the slides. You can find a myriad of things that you can write on to connect to your personal life, okay? So my 3 theories are going to be culture shock, social exchange theory, and the hidden self, okay? So in paragraph 1, you need to mention all 3 of those, okay? And just set us up as a normal introductory, okay? The OWL at Purdue, OWL, Online Writing Lab at Purdue, is a great resource for you for that, okay? Paragraph number 2. Paragraph number 2 is going to be all about your first theory, which for me is culture shock. So first I want you to state it, define it, and explain it, okay? And here's the key, and I'll in detail go through paragraph 2, but then you should understand that paragraph 3 and 4, those number 2 and 3 theories, will be exactly the same as your first one, okay? So let's take a look real quick. Hey, I need you to go over there, okay? All right, so let's look at the intro again real quick. All right, so your intro should sound something like this, and please don't duplicate it. Be creative, do your own thing, okay? Over the course of the semester, I have chosen three theories or concepts that have really resonated with me in my personal life, in which I will apply in terms of three aha moments. For the purposes of this paper, I have first chosen to talk about culture shock in relation to my first time moving to Alabama, going to school there, being from Michigan. Secondly, I'm going to talk about social exchange theory in relation to me choosing to take a new job or whether I should stay at my old job. And lastly, I'm going to talk about and discuss the hidden self in relation to a good friend of mine who keeps a lot of secrets and doesn't talk about a lot of his personal things. Okay? Right there, there's paragraph one. Well, what'd you do? You introduced your three theories, right? You mentioned them, right? And then you talk about briefly what kind of story you're going to give us. A lot of people have asked, does this have to be one moment that I apply all three theories, or can it be three separate theories? I would say that the vast majority of people use three separate aha moments, but you don't have to do that. You could have one experience in which you had multiple things happen. So be flexible there. It can be three separate moments or it can be one event and you can apply three theories. Totally flexible there. Okay, so let's go back to paragraph number 2. So now, paragraph 2, you guessed it, I'm going to talk only about culture shock. But here's what I have to do. I have to state the theory. I have to define it with in-text citation. Okay, so tell me what author, theorist said it, and then explain and give that personal example. Right here, this is the biggest one that I'm looking for because this is going to show your understanding of that theory. Okay, so let's see what paragraph 2 would look like. Culture shock is a model in communication that has 4 stages in which an individual encounters a culture that is different from their native culture. According to DeVito, culture shock is the psychological reaction you experience when you experience a culture that is different than yours. Notice how right there I defined it, right here. I gave you that. And I would say DeVito, Johnson, Smith, Jones, comma. You can put the year or the page number. Okay, we're flexible here. Now, number C, or letter C, I'm sorry. This is the most important one right here. Explain your personal aha moment. Okay. This reminds me of when I went to school in Alabama. I attended the University of Alabama. Being from Michigan, going to the Deep South was a huge culture shock. At the first point, the honeymoon stage, I was absolutely excited, fascinated. I was living on my own still. I was living my best life, so I was super happy. That I was going down to Alabama, and we were a really good football team at the time. I was just super excited to go down there. However, I experienced some differences when I started to become a native of Alabama. Well, I noticed that their sales tax was significantly higher than Michigan. I think 11.5%. I also remember too as well that one time I was shopping in a grocery store on a Sunday, and I just remembered that at that point in time when I was shopping, I had already, went to church and whatnot, but it was vastly different because by the time, like, no one was in the store at that point in time because everyone, literally was away at church. I wasn't used to that being in Michigan. So that kind of caught me off guard that culturally, even being in meetings, people would start off meetings with prayer. We never had that, in Michigan when I went to Central Michigan for undergrad. And so I was very surprised at how different the culture was. Also to the fact that not everyone locked their doors. That was foreign to me. Being from Wayne County, everybody locks, you're in Metro Detroit, everybody locks their stuff. So I had experienced that culture shock. And that really kind of woke me up that, hey, Alabama, more specifically Tuscaloosa, Alabama, was vastly different. Now, here's where you enter your transition. Now that I've talked about culture shock, I now will talk about social exchange theory in relation to a time that I was contemplating changing jobs. Social exchange theory is a model where the profits are the rewards minus the cost. When you look, and then you would cite the author, obviously part B. And then what I'm looking at here on C is give your personal aha moment, okay? For several years, I worked for a national leader in a grocery chain. And for a long time, going back to that, I want to talk about that. So I was given the opportunity to go back into the classroom, and I was super excited. And the profits were a new career, but the rewards minus the cost. Well, the rewards are, working Monday through Friday, from 7 until 2:30. I would be able to be around my family more, but the costs were a potential pay cut temporarily, a whole different switch. I was leaving a fantastic team in which I was really, really close with. And so ultimately, I chose to accept a job going back into education. But as you can notice, I had that profits minus the rewards minus the cost. And the profit ultimately was spending more time with my family. Now that I've talked about social exchange theory, I now will conclude with the hidden self. Okay, and then you would state the theory, define it. Okay, that's Lufsen and Ingham, and then explain your aha moment here. So, one of my best friends, more specifically, keeps a lot of secrets. He's very, very private about his finances, his struggles personally, and one of the biggest things is that my friend tends to confide in me and kind of explain his opportunities and things that he's struggling with. For a long time, he didn't tell his parents about some situations that he had gotten into with the law. He was able to beat some of those things, but he kept that hidden from his family, and it ultimately had surfaced up. But he kept those things hidden because he didn't want to be judged. He didn't want anyone to look down on him, and so for his specific purposes, he kept a lot of things hidden that he was struggling with, and he ultimately ended up getting some professional help, which was fantastic, and I applaud him for that. And I think that the things that were hidden now ended up becoming the open self. And so now, when you look at paragraph 5, this is your conclusion. Will you restate, that you talked about culture shock, social exchange theory, as well as the hidden self. Giving it a theme and bringing it all together would sound something like this. So, in conclusion, culture shock in relation to me moving down to Alabama was significant because I noticed that not everyone thought the same way that I thought, and I saw a different part of America who lives their lives. And it's not my point to judge how anyone lives their life as being better or worse. Secondly, I had discussed social exchange theory in relation to my life because I was contemplating taking a job. Ultimately, I did, but I was looking at the rewards minus the cost, and obviously the profits were spending more time with my family. And then lastly, I gave you the example in the narrative about my good friend who was struggling with the hidden self. He kept a lot of things hidden, etc., in his personal life. So here's some key guys. And that was, again, these are just quick examples for your time. I know you all are super busy. So most will have more than 5 paragraphs, but this is simply a bare minimum. Must be double spaced, skip lines in between. Please do not feel compelled to fill the space. Be clear, concise, and cogent in your analysis here. Now let's talk briefly about the genogram. Okay, you'll notice that's 25 points and in the slide and the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, real quick. So your genogram, I want you to begin with your grandparents on both your mother's and father's side. So there's 4 people total. There should be several symbols coming to and from you on this genogram. I've provided the example that I'll show you here in a second. You must show your relation, and you are required to show the following: your grandparents, your parents, and your immediate or step siblings. You, your spouse, significant other, and or children, if applicable, and any additional relationships shown. So cousins, great-grandparents. You can earn up to 25 extra credit points here. This isn't required, okay? So most of you all, if you don't choose to do the extra credit, you don't need to show me your cousins. That's how we do these things. All right, so let's talk about this genogram real quick. So remember, you should only have your grandparents, parents, immediate siblings, your spouse, significant other, and or children. Again, great-grandparents, that's all extra credit. That's pretty quick, and it should look like this. Here is relationships here. This is attached, okay? And this, some people may be asking, why are we doing this? Well, this helps you look at trends in your family because we notice that our family influences us, right? And so we want to look at some behaviors, and these can be very enlightening. Some of you all have texted me and said, wow, I've learned an incredible amount about my family just doing this, and I've really had to take a step back, okay? Then here is our completed genogram. Okay, this is what I don't want to say perfect genogram should look like, but take a look. Daniel is obviously our central figure, so Daniel could be you, Danielle, or whoever. Okay, Mike, Erica, whoever. So notice how Daniel is the largest person pretty much here, and you see several things to a degree on here. This isn't a perfect genogram, but it's a good sample to see what it kind of should look like. Okay, and color coded. Again. It's 25 points. Don't make this more difficult than what it should be. Okay, so that's an example there. So you see these are the symbols. Okay, and then obviously here's the sample. Okay. Lastly, the PowerPoint presentation. You do not. All I need you to do, okay, is create a five slide presentation. Slide one is an intro title showing your three theories. So on the first slide, culture shock, social exchange theory, hidden self. Slide two, theory number one, listed with the definition, a brief summary of the aha moment, and one generic picture, photo of this concept. So culture shock, maybe I want to show, I can just Google a image, right? And I want to show maybe a picture of someone who looks confused being in a new place. That's it, okay? Number three, slide number three. Theory number two, again, the same thing. For mine was social exchange theory. Maybe I would put, my business logo on there, and then the profit is a family spending more time with them. You could be creative with that, okay? And then lastly, the hidden self. Maybe I may write the word secret on there. And then slide five would be conclusions. So any picture you include can be generic from the internet. And, again, I gave you an example of, if your concept or theory was emotion, you may find a picture of someone happy. Okay. So I recognize that this could be tough times at times to complete, but especially if the relationship is or was complicated, but please select your family of choice. Please make a concerted attempt to use biological family when appropriate. Okay. So today I just recapped the AHA paper. Hopefully this has been beneficial for you. And hopefully we can wrap up and get through these last couple weeks. And so thank you very much for tuning in, and have